I remember that night as if it were carved into my memory with a knife. I was 12 years old, just old enough for my parents to finally trust me to stay home alone for the very first time. They left for a dinner party and told me to lock the doors, keep the lights on, and call if anything seemed strange. At first I felt proud, independent, grown up. I sprawled on the couch, flipping through TV channels, enjoying the rare silence of an empty house. But after a while, the silence grew heavier, pressing against the walls. The hum of the refrigerator felt louder, the tick of the clock more pronounced, and then came the hunger. I decided to order pizza. It felt like a small adventure, dialing the number, placing the order, waiting alone for food to arrive. Something about it made me feel like an adult. About 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang. My heart skipped in excitement as I ran to the door. On the porch stood a man in a delivery uniform, holding a box that smelled of melted cheese and warm bread. I opened the door just a crack, handed him the cash, and reached for the pizza. That's when he paused. His eyes narrowed slightly, scanning me up and down. And then, in a voice too calm, too curious, he asked, "Are you home? Alone?" My breath caught in my throat. The question felt wrong, not casual, not innocent. My instincts screamed at me. Forcing a shaky smile, I lied. "No, my dad's upstairs." The man didn't say a word. He just stared for a moment longer, his lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. Then he handed me the box and walked away slowly, glancing back once before disappearing down the street. I slammed the door, locked it, and stood there trembling. Why would a pizza delivery guy ask that? I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was paranoid. I turned on the TV louder, opened the pizza box, and pretended everything was fine. But the cheese tasted like ash in my mouth. My mind kept circling back to that question, the way he had looked at me, as though he was measuring something. Time passed. The house was quiet, the night growing darker. And then, knock, 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 3 sharp raps echoed through the hall. I froze. My skin crawled as I crept toward the front door and peeked through the small window. It was him, the same delivery man. He wasn't holding food this time. He wasn't smiling. He just stood there, eyes fixed on the door, one hand tapping against the wood in that same, deliberate rhythm. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost pleading. My phone died. "Can I come in to use yours? Just for a quick call?" Every nerve in my body screamed no. I swallowed hard and forced my voice steady. "I can't. My dad doesn't let me open the door for anyone." The man tilted his head, as though studying me, like I was prey that had just slipped from his grasp. He lingered for what felt like hours, then knocked again, harder this time. Thud, thud, thud. I ran to the phone and dialed my parents, whispering frantically what was happening. My mother's voice cracked with fear. "Lock yourself in your room, right now. We're calling the police." I sprinted down the hallway, slammed my bedroom door shut, and locked it. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. The house fell eerily silent again, until I heard it. The faint creak of the back door. The soft shuffle of footsteps entering the house. I pressed myself against the floor, trying not to breathe. Every sound became magnified. The groan of the floorboards, the faint rustle of clothing, the deliberate steps moving from room to room. He was inside. I could hear him exploring the living room, then the kitchen. Each sound closer than the last. And then, the footsteps stopped, right outside my bedroom door. The doorknob jiggled, slowly at first, then harder. CKK, CKK. Clack. I bit down on my hand to keep from screaming, tears stinging my eyes. I could picture him on the other side, his ear pressed to the wood, waiting for the faintest sound of movement. And then, suddenly, the wail of sirens. Red and blue lights flashed through my window. The footsteps retreated instantly. I heard the back door slam. By the time the police burst inside, the intruder was gone. They searched the house and found the sliding glass door unlocked, the back door wide open. But the man had vanished into the night. I told them about the pizza delivery guy, the question he'd asked, the way he'd come back. The police listened but shook their heads. There was no solid evidence, no fingerprints, no witnesses, nothing to prove it was him. But I know what I saw. I know who stood on my porch, who stepped inside my house. Even now, years later, whenever I hear a knock on the door at night, my stomach turns to ice, because I remember those eyes staring at me through the glass. And sometimes, I wonder if he still remembers me too. I grew up in a remote town in North Idaho, where the trees pressed close to every house and the nearest neighbor was miles away. Living there always felt peaceful until the night I realized it started subtly. One evening, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard a soft knock at my window. At first, I thought it was just a branch brushing against the glass, but the rhythm was deliberate. Tap, 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 and then it stopped, only to resume a few seconds. Lee approached, cautiously, pressing my eye against the blinds. A man stood in the shadows of the yard. I could see his face faintly illuminated by the moonlight, expressionless, yet strangely aware, like he had been expecting me. In his hand was a knife, catching the light with a menacing gleam. I froze. Unable, Toy ran to my parents, shouting. They reassured me, but I could see the worry in their eyes. They explained there had been a string of break-ins in the area, people exploiting the isolation of the forest. That night, I slept with one eye open, the other glued to the door. Every sound outside, a snapping branch, a rust. The nights that followed were worse. Each one particularly stormy night. The power went out. The house was plunged into darkness, shadows merging with the wind outside. That's when I heard it, scratching at the back door, low and persistent. It wasn't just a knock. It was deliberate, almost patient. I pressed my ear against the door and could hear shallow breathing, uneven and deliberate, and the occasional muffled mutter I couldn't quite make out. My stomach turned cold. The next morning, I discovered fresh footprints in the mud. They formed a perfect circle around the house, stopping occasionally in front of windows, as if he had been observing each room while we slept. My hands shook as I traced the prints. Whoever had been here wasn't just passing by. He had been studying us. Days later, he returned. This time, he didn't hide. I was in the kitchen when I heard heavy footsteps on the porch. I grabbed my father's old rifle and positioned myself near the door, the dog growling at my side. The man froze in the shadows, staring, evaluating. I shouted, warning him to leave, my voice quivering yet firm. The dog lunged. The man hesitated, then disappeared into the forest, melting into the darkness like a shadow being absorbed by the night. The sense of being watched never left me. I would hear rustling in the woods at odd hours, shadows moving beyond the tree line, faint scratching on the siding. Every creak in the house became a possible threat. I became hyper-aware of every sound, every flicker of movement. Sleep was shallow, filled with dreams of someone standing silently in the doorway, knife in hand, watching me sleep. Even after he stopped appearing, the fear lingered. Living in that house taught me a new kind of terror, one that doesn't end. It crawls under your skin, waits in the quiet corners, and gnaws at your sense of safety. Some nights I still wake to the sound of footsteps circling my house, imagining the shadow of a man lingering just out of sight, patient, silent, calculating. Because the truth is, he could come back any time. And somewhere in the darkness, I know he's still out there, waiting for the perfect moment to return. It was the perfect idea, or at least it seemed perfect at first. My friends and I decided to rent a cabin deep in the forests of South Carolina. for spring break. We were craving solitude, a place away from the city, from responsibilities, from the endless noise of daily life. The forest promised peace, but what we found was something far darker. The first night, the forest felt alive in a way that was almost oppressive. The darkness outside the cabin was thick, almost tangible, pressing against the windows. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and something else. Something faintly metallic, almost like blood. Every sound we made felt too loud, intrusive, as if the forest disapproved of our presence. We tried to laugh it off, convincing ourselves that we were overreacting, but that laughter sounded hollow in the vast, suffocating quiet. By midnight, I couldn't sleep. My bed faced the window, and I kept glancing into the blackness outside, imagining shadows moving just beyond the tree line. Then I heard it tap, 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 a soft knock at the window, deliberate and steady. My pulse spiked. I froze, heart hammering. Slowly, I inched toward the window and peered through the blinds. He was there, a man, completely still, staring directly at me. His face was pale, almost ghostly in the moonlight, and his eyes were wide and unblinking, empty yet piercing. For a moment, time seemed to stop. He didn't move, didn't speak, he just watched. And then, just as silently as he appeared, he vanished into the shadows. The next morning, we found footprints. Bare, human footprints, large and oddly deliberate, circling the cabin in tight loops, stopping at each door and window, as if he had been observing us for hours. Panic set in, but we tried to reason it out. Maybe a local hiker, curious, lost. Nothing sinister, but deep down, we knew better. Night 2 brought a deeper terror. We had barely settled in when we noticed shadows flickering outside the windows. A movement, subtle, deliberate, that shouldn't have been possible. Then, from the kitchen, a sound, a soft shuffle, the faint scraping of bare feet across the wooden floor. We froze. One of my friends whispered, "Did you hear that?" I turned and saw him. The same man, inside the cabin this time, completely naked, standing in the kitchen, smiling. His presence made the room cold, the shadows long and grotesque. He didn't speak. He didn't move much, just lingered, as if he had been waiting for us to notice him. We screamed, scattered. The air was thick with fear, and the forest outside seemed to lean closer, watching. Phones were useless, no signal. Every exit felt too far, too dangerous. Adrenaline surged, and we grabbed whatever objects we could find, sticks, chairs, even kitchen knives, anything to defend ourselves. He followed our movements slowly, almost enjoying our panic. And then, as quickly as he appeared, he was gone again, disappearing into the shadows between the walls and the forest beyond. The night dragged on. Every noise, the creak of a floorboard, the whistle of the wind, even the howl of a distant coyote sent our hearts racing. None of us slept. When morning finally came, the relief was temporary. Outside, more footprints, not just human, but long, dragging prints that seemed unnatural, twisting around the cabin, leading toward the woods. By the third night, we were barely holding on. The forest itself seemed alive, watching, judging. Every rustle of leaves sounded like footsteps, every shadow a lurking presence. And then we realized the cabin wasn't alone in the woods. There were signs of others, hidden, watching. Small things, a broken branch, a disturbed patch of dirt, the smell of smoke in the air when we hadn't built a fire. We didn't wait for confrontation. We packed up, hearts racing, adrenaline burning through our veins, and fled into the night, toward the car. We didn't stop until we were on the main road, shaking, gasping for air. The forest now behind us. When we called the police, they revealed the horrifying truth. Trespassers often lived in that forest, hiding, stalking travelers. using the isolation to their advantage. And there was something stranger. The cabin's listing disappeared online within days. The owner never responded to calls or emails. It was as if the cabin itself had been erased from existence, leaving no trace for anyone else. Even now, I can't forget that feeling of being watched, the sensation of eyes following every move, even in the light of day. The shadowed figure in the kitchen, the footprints circling the cabin, the faint metallic scent in the air. It haunts me, and sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still hear the soft shuffle of bare feet on wood, the deliberate, patient tapping at the window, and I remember that the forest is patient. It waits, always, and we were foolish enough to wander into its grasp.